As you all know, I absolutely love cars, and I'm in a really fortunate position whereby I get to buy fancy cars for work, but I also get to enjoy them as if they're my own. But in doing that, I also have to take all the responsibilities that come along with keeping these cars on the road. And if you own a car, then you'll know that it's quite difficult to keep a used car on the road. So when there's 11 of them, and some of them are over 30 years old, it can be quite a nightmare. Well, today I'm going to share my nightmarish day with you all, and it starts with this. This is our Imperial Viscount, and if you watched our earlier film on this, you'll know that this is in fact a replica, and it's built upon a TX1, an old London taxi cab. Now, with over 400,000 miles on the block, on the engine and on some of the running gear, it's a little bit tired in parts. At the weekend this car was out and it's developed a little bit of an oil leak, so I'm going to take this to the garage and swap it for our Daimler. Now, the last time you've seen our Daimler was the last time we've seen it, and it was when we finished filming the review on it, and that was around 2 months ago. We took it to the garage for a small oil leak and an MOT, and 2 months later, and quite a big bill later, it's ready to collect. Once we've swapped the cars, we're going to go to a dealership called Ellis Ashton Motors, and they've got two really special cars that I'm super interested in to see, and maybe, just maybe, we can buy one. Overall, this car has been very reliable. We've owned it for around 4 years, and there's nothing major that we've ever had done to it. At the weekend it was very wet and the brake lights stopped working, so I'm hoping that's just something that's got wet and it's a relatively easy fix. It also started spewing diesel all over the road, and I'm hoping that there's just a loose clip or a fractured line somewhere, and they both should be quick and easy, cheap repairs. So there we go, Paul knows exactly what needs doing to the Imperial, and the Daimler is all ready for us to drive away. And the most important thing is, I've got the bill, and I'm going to run through the bill to tell you exactly what's been done to this car over the last 6 weeks. And believe it or not, there's quite a lot that has been done. The cam cover gasket has been replaced. The near side outer track rod has been replaced. There's been some additional labour for some seized threads. It looks as though they had quite a bit of trouble with this because there was a further bill for some heat treatments for the same thing. There's been an engineering cost for engineering things. There's a offside rear shock absorber which has been fitted. There's some additional labour for a top shock absorber, which the retainers were seized, and there was 2 of them. We've replaced the exhaust bobbins, which somebody will be glad to know, because in the last film that we did with this car, somebody kindly pointed out that my exhaust was a tad loose. The rear exhaust fouling drive shafts, mounts and body has been corroded, so that's all been removed and welded up. The drive shaft gaiters have been replaced. The near side front tyre has been fitted, replaced and balanced, or replaced, fitted and balanced. We had a power steering pump as well, so I bought a new power steering pump from a guy in Scotland who's a super helpful chap, and he shipped it up to me, and Paul's kindly replaced that. We've obviously had some power steering fluid and 500 millilitres of oil cleaning solution, and that brings the entire 6 weeks worth of work to an end, and the total is quite a lot, but there's a lot of work that's been done, in fairness. So good news is the Daimler is good to go for another 3 days, 4 days, who knows. But let's not worry about that. Let's get on the road, let's get over to Ellis Ashton and check out these 2 very special cars. It's a bit cold, should wait for a bit. So on the initial drive, as always, Paul's done a stellar job and everything's working absolutely fantastic. The only thing that I do need to do is add some fuel to this beast, but that isn't uncommon. In fact, I don't think I've ever been out in this car and not had to make a fuel stop. But at the moment we are running on fumes, so I'm very glad to see this BP station just round the corner from the garage. So there we go, £57.95, and that should last us for another 2 hours, hour and a half, maybe an hour. I'll go and pay. So now that we're all fueled up, it's time to head over to Ellis Ashton Motors, and you may remember that a couple of weeks ago I borrowed Phil's Mustang Bullet, and what a special car that was. Whilst we were filming, Phil was telling me about some of the new stock that he's getting in, and there's two very, very special cars that are in his showroom right now, so I've got to go over and check them out. And I thought, why not bring you guys along for the ride too and show you these two very special beasts. Maybe we can even speak to Phil about part exchanging this big old Daimler for one of them. Who knows? So here we've got two dream cars, the Audi R8 RWS and of course the Mercedes AMG GTR, finished in this rather subtle green. Which one to start with? First, let's take a look at the Merc. The GTR is a development of the GTS. I don't know whether it comes across on camera quite how impressive this vehicle is in real life. It is so intimidating to be stood by this car. It just looks so aggressive, and it's really helped by all this carbon fibre that's just plastered all over the vehicle. There's four-wheel steering as well on the GTR, and there's some really impressive, clever moving underbody aero. It's up 74 brake horsepower from the twin-turbo V8, along with a load of other stuff to make this the perfect car for the track. Ideal if you're looking for a safety car for, let's say, Formula 1. The nose is inspired by the old 300 SL gull wing, and there's actually a carbon fibre panel that lowers itself by 40mm at high speed, adding a Venturi effect, and apparently reduces front axle lift by 40 kilograms at 155 miles an hour. And I suppose that's super useful for the weekly trip to Morrison's. Behind these carbon fibre wings, we've got a double wishbone suspension and a coil-over damper unit, which is why they're a little beefier. We have a front mid-engine with a slight rear bias thanks to the gearbox sat on the rear axle. Not to forget two turbos thrown in for good measure. This thing is quite possibly the best sounding V8. Take a listen. The GTR is 15 kilograms lighter than the GTS and has a 0 to 62 time of 3.6 seconds. The carbon fibre doesn't stop on the outside either, it continues on the interior and it's plastered absolutely everywhere. It's such a special cabin to sit in. Like a lot of cars, switchgear is shared across the entire range, and sure, I recognise some of these buttons and screens from my V-Class, but I must say, this feels so special. Now, I may joke about switchgear, but this button to control the windows, I'm pretty sure I had that exact same button in a 2008 Mercedes C-Class, but I won't get caught up on that because there's far more goodness in this vehicle. The amount of detail and the amount of carbon fibre that's in this thing is insane. Just little touches like this AMG carbon fibre plate above even more carbon fibre. The brakes are absolutely huge on this thing, just take a look at them. And there's even more little subtle details, more AMG badges in the rear lights. And then you come to the party piece, this rear spoiler, which is probably bigger than my ironing board at home. And I know you don't buy these cars for the boot, but just take a look at the space that we've got available in here. It's quite practical. I could definitely get my weekly shop in there. I think I'm sold. I think I've fallen in love. The GTR is so impressive and I'd love to take this thing home with me. But let's not forget about the Audi R8 RWS. This is special because it's only one of 999 ever made. As we know, R8s are usually four-wheel drive, but not the RWS. This is rear-wheel drive, and there's an advantage to that in that there's less weight. And that's a bit of a trait of this car in stripping things back and providing a more pure driving experience. We've got a 0 to 62 time of 3.7 seconds and a top speed of 198 miles an hour. Although we do only get steel brakes, and there's obviously a lot less carbon fibre on the R8 than there is on the GTR, but I've I've got to say, I do like this thing. Now, I must say that neither the GTR or the R8 is particularly easy for me to get in. I think it's because I'm quite tall. So let's give you a little tour of the interior of the R8, and I must say it is quite simplistic in here, but I do really like that fact. I love this badge here, which just reminds you that you are owning one car of only 999 ever made. It's a really nice touch. There's the central vent, which does look a little bit lonely, but again, it just adds to this minimalistic look. And then obviously all the switch gear and gear selectors below. And I must admit, when I first jumped into the car, it took me a little while to find the start-stop button, which is of course located on the steering wheel. And that brings me to the most important part of this film. What does this thing sound like? That sounds pretty mean. And I'm not sure whether this sounds maybe a little bit better than the GTR. Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's nip back over to that and try that one too. On reflection, the GTR is a much easier car to get in and out of. And it's definitely a little bit more subtle with its sound, but I do think there's only one way to decide which has got the best sound. And it's just to buy both of them. That is the only logical explanation in this situation, surely. Take both home. Of course, I'm not comparing these two cars. They are both very different vehicles. But once I heard they were in the showroom, I thought I've got to come down and check them out. In reality, I probably can't afford either one of them, never mind the bumper alone of this GTR. But it's been incredible to see both of them in the flesh. I hope you've liked this content, and if you did, then please help support the channel by liking and subscribing. And we'll see you again next week. As we know, R8s usually come with four-wheel drive, but not the RWS. This comes with rear-wheel drive. Ah, geez, that was so close. The camera. I know you know what you're doing, like, but I hit myself a bit then. Well, mate, give me a heart attack there. About a millimetre away from the wing there. Hang on, let me get it together now.